Hello, guys. Want to do just a little quickie Q&A here. And I took some questions out of the comments on my channel and decided I would elaborate on a few of them. So the first one was about comparing the narcissism to ASD. I think this is from an NT wife was concerned that her husband is narcissistic and not ASD. So let's take a quick look at that. We're going to compare NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, with ASD. And so we'll compare and contrast. First of all, let's define. Narcissism is characterized by grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. Some of you are saying, well, that sounds like ASD. Well, ASD is, first of all, not a personality disorder. It's a developmental disorder that affects communication, behavior, and social interaction. So there is a significant disparity there. Let's look at the core features of both. Narcissism centers around self-importance and entitlement. That's not ASD at all. If anything, the person on the autism spectrum does not feel good about himself. So ASD features include difficulty with social cues and repetitive behaviors. They tend not to feel entitled, and they don't feel very important. In fact, a lot of them feel, at an unconscious level perhaps, a little defective and flawed. Let's look at empathy levels and compare the both, NPD and ASD. People with narcissism often have significantly reduced ability to empathize. People with ASD may struggle with understanding social cues, but can empathize when educated or aware. So people on the autism spectrum definitely have empathy. They just don't have displayed empathy to the degree that the NT partner would want. Now let's compare the two in the category of interpersonal relationships. Narcissists may manipulate relationships for personal gain. People on the spectrum often desire social connections, but may struggle with initiating or maintaining them. So the narcissist uses people to get their goals accomplished. If the ASD person appears controlling, which he or she sometimes does, it's not out to manipulate or con the other person. They're trying to control the other person because they're trying to control their anxiety. So there is a control factor between the two. One person is doing it to dominate, the other person is doing it to alleviate anxiety. Okay, now we're going to compare narcissism and ASD in the category of self-perception. Narcissists typically have an inflated sense of self-worth. That's not ASD. People with ASD may have a more variable self-image and can experience self-doubt. You can see that there's a stark contrast there. Now we're going to compare the two in the category of social skills. Narcissists often excel in certain social situations due to their charm. People on the autism spectrum find social situations challenging, and many times they require support to improve their social skills. They don't come off as charming, they come off as odd. Communication style is the next category we'll look at. Narcissists may dominate conversations and seek to be the center of attention. Does that sound like ASD? I don't think so. People with ASD may have atypical communication styles, including literal interpretation and difficulty with small talk. Now let's compare the two in the category of reaction to criticism. Narcissists often react defensively or with anger when criticized. Now that does sound like ASD, doesn't it? People with ASD may not react emotionally to criticism, focusing instead on the content of what was said. That one is kind of iffy, I'll give you that. But let's contrast the two. The person with narcissism reacts to criticism because they have low self-esteem. The person with ASD reacts to criticism because they have low self-esteem too. So the difference would be the narcissist feels that they are better than the other person. So that's why they have a sensitivity to criticism. How dare you criticize me when I am better than you? The person with ASD is sensitive to criticism because they already don't feel too good about themselves. And they feel like they're dumb, and they feel like they're being on the receiving end of disapproval, which they have been their entire life. They feel like they're being micromanaged and treated like a child. Their self-esteem is already in the toilet. Let's look at motivation. Narcissists are primarily motivated by personal gain and admiration. People on the autism spectrum often pursue interest with passion regardless of social validation. Most people on the autism spectrum could care less about reputation or admiration. Number 10, developmental origin. Narcissism can develop from a combination of genetics and environmental factors, often linked to parenting styles. Sounds a little bit like ASD. ASD is believed to have a strong genetic component and is evident from early childhood. You don't have too many 5-year-old narcissists. They may appear to be narcissistic, but that's just, terrible 2s and the terrible 3s. You can't diagnose narcissism as a young child. You certainly can diagnose as young as age 3 people with ASD. Let's look at diagnosis now. Narcissism is diagnosed through the criteria in the DSM-5 under narcissistic personality disorder. ASD is diagnosed based on specific criteria in the DSM-5 pertaining to developmental patterns. Number 12, coping mechanisms. The narcissists often use manipulation or aggression to cope with stress. People on the spectrum might engage in repetitive behaviors or routines to cope with stress. 13, let's look at real-world functioning. Many narcissists can function well in societal roles due to their charm and drive. People on the spectrum may need accommodation to thrive in various environments. That's a stark contrast. Let's now look at awareness of condition. Narcissists may lack awareness of their issues, often blaming others. That does sound like ASD to a degree, doesn't it? People with ASD may be aware of their challenges and actively seek help or support. The narcissists don't see any need for help because they're better than other people. People with ASD that do not have any narcissistic tendencies often realize that they struggle in life, and they know that they probably need some social skills training, we will say. Let's look at behavioral traits. Narcissists often display arrogance and entitlement. And you might say, well, it seems like my ASD husband seems arrogant. Well, it looks like that. People with ASD may exhibit behaviors such as stimming, which is self-stimulatory behavior. So there's the stark difference between the two if we're talking about behavioral traits. Let's look at stability of relationships. Narcissists often have unstable relationships as they push others away. Individuals with ASD may have stable relationships but may struggle with social interactions. I know, it seems like it's hard to tell the difference, isn't it? The narcissists have trouble with relationships because others get annoyed with them being so arrogant and cocky. Person with ASD has problems with relationships because they don't understand social cues, emotions, body language, sarcasm, and so on. Now let's look at intense focus. Narcissists often focus on their own needs and interests. Well, you say, well, ASD people do that. Individuals with ASD may develop intense interest in specific topics. So the narcissist has intense focus because they think that their niche is like gold. Nobody else can do what I do. I don't find people with ASD being that cocky. Number 8, perspective taking. Narcissists struggle to take others' perspectives unless it serves their own interest. Now you can say, well, ASD people do that too. Okay, I'll give you that. But for different reasons. Individuals with ASD may find perspective taking challenging due to social communication difficulties. So the narcissist sees the other person's perspective, but decides that their perspective is better. The ASD individual doesn't even see the other person's perspective. Okay, let's look at emotional regulation, comparing NPD with ASD. Narcissists struggle with regulating emotions, leading to explosive reactions. You might say, well, that sounds like ASD again. Okay. Individuals with ASD may experience heightened emotional responses, but can learn regulation strategies. So again, with respect to emotional regulation, the narcissist struggles with that because they feel superior. The individual with ASD struggles with that because they feel inferior. Now let's look at social acceptance. Narcissists may be socially accepted in some circles due to their charisma. On the other hand, people with ASD may face stigma or misunderstanding in social context. Now let's look at impact on others. Narcissistic behavior can harm friends and family, leading to resentment. I said, well, yeah, sounds like ASD again. Okay. ASD can affect interpersonal dynamics, but often without malicious intent. The narcissist has malicious intent. As a narcissist, I want to dominate you. I want to control you. I want to cut you down to size. That's not ASD. Let's look at adaptability. Narcissists may struggle to adapt to situations where they are not in control. Individuals with ASD may also find change challenging, but can learn coping strategies. So the narcissist doesn't want to adapt to others because he looks down to others. Why would I want to adapt to these inferior people? With respect to ASD, they have a hard time adapting due to mind blindness, emotions blindness, executive function, sensory sensitivities, weak central coherence, problems with prediction, and so on. Now let's look at support needs. Narcissists may resist seeking help, seeing themselves as superior. Individuals with ASD often benefit from therapy and support to improve social skills. So again, the person on the autism spectrum would, if you as the NT spouse are lucky, they will reach out because they recognize my social skills are low, my emotional literacy is low. The narcissists think, no, my social skills are as high and better than anybody else. My emotional literacy is higher than anybody else. Number 24 here, we have 25 total. We're going to look at long-term outcomes. Narcissism can lead to social isolation over time due to destructive behaviors. You might say, well, that sounds like ASD. Okay. The person with ASD, if they have support, they can lead fulfilling lives and build meaningful relationships, because we are talking about, in this video here, ASD level 1. So narcissists go around burning bridges and they blame the other person for the burnt bridge. The person with ASD, if they're serious about developing some social skills and emotional literacy, and I work with guys on the autism spectrum all the time, and they say, you know what, I have really kind of destroyed the sanity in my NT wife. I have really hurt her. I recognize that. And most guys on the autism spectrum that don't have narcissistic tendencies are totally accepting that they have made a bunch of mistakes that's caused a bunch of damage. Now, it is possible for somebody on the autism spectrum to also have some narcissistic traits, but I have yet to know anybody who has been diagnosed with ASD level 1 and narcissistic personality disorder. And the last one, we want to look at cultural perception. Narcissism is also often stigmatized and viewed negatively in society, right? Nobody likes a narcissist. ASD, on the other hand, is increasingly recognized though misunderstandings and stigma can still exist. So nobody is going, hey, this person is narcissistic, but we have to have some compassion for them and we have to accommodate them. I don't think so. But there is, at least among those who have a little compassion and want to extend some grace and mercy, they see somebody with ASD and they go, this person does need some support and does need some accommodations and a little bit of grace and mercy. So there's that. Let's see. Okay, I want to go on to the next question here. This is, I guess, from an ASD husband wanting to know about some signs of borderline personality disorder traits. I guess he's assuming that his wife may have BPD. So, of course, we're not going to diagnose anybody here on a video, but here would be some signs of borderline personality disorder traits. If you have all of these traits, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you have the disorder. But anyway, if you wonder if your wife, who might be overly emotional, according to you, has some borderline personality traits, here, we'll look at some of these. So one would be intense mood swings. In other words, one moment she's filled with joy and laughing and enjoying life, and the next she's in a deep funk and feeling hopeless or angry over little stuff. So that's kind of a sign of BPD. The second trait would be fear of being left. In other words, she often experiences a heightened anxiety at the thought of being abandoned. And then you might view her as clingy. You know, she clings to you or reacts dramatically when she feels someone might be pulling away. Okay. A third trait of BPD would be unstable relationships. Her relationships can kind of be like a roller coaster. She may idealize someone and think they're the best thing ever, only to suddenly believe that this same person can't do anything right. Hot, cold, black, white thinking. Impulsive choices would be another trait. She might make snap decisions that have serious consequences, like spending a significant amount of money on something that she doesn't need, or engaging in risky behavior, like getting drunk at a party, for example. The fifth one would be feeling empty. There's often a pervasive sense of emptiness that people with ASD can't quite shake off. And that kind of leaves them searching for fulfillment in unhealthy ways, or feeling like something is always missing. You would have, with BPD, a lot of anger issues. When upset, she's going to struggle to control her anger, and this is going to lead to explosive outbursts or fights, often over minor irritations that escalate quickly. Simple, small things that wouldn't bother anybody else. 7 would be identity issues. She might frequently question who she is. She might frequently change careers, change hobbies, change belief systems. And so she's kind of chronically feeling confused about her own identity. Number 8 would be emotional ups and downs. Her emotional state can swing wildly from extreme highs to extreme lows, making it difficult for her to maintain a stable mood for any length of time. A 9th one would be stress-induced paranoia. Under significant stress, she might feel detached from reality or have paranoid thoughts, which can lead her to mistrust others without clear reason. And then we have self-harm. She may resort to self-injury as a way to cope with her emotional pain, using it to express feelings that she can't articulate with words. Another trait of BPD would be trouble with relationships. Friendships, family relationships often suffer due to her unpredictable behavior, leading to a pattern of losing close connections over time. Number 12 here would be all or nothing thinking. She tends to view people in black and white terms. One day this person is a friend and they're perfect. The next day this person is an enemy and they're entirely untrustworthy. And so there's a lot of relationship turbulence with BPD. When I say BPD, we're talking about borderline personality disorder, for those of you who are not sure what that is. Another trait would be clingy behavior. There is often an intense need for reassurance from her loved ones, requiring frequent affirmations of loyalty and commitment that can feel overwhelming. Another one would be manipulative tendencies. At times, she may use guilt or emotional manipulation to maintain control in relationships, which that kind of creates a dynamic that can feel very unbalanced and unfair to the spouse. Seeking constant reassurance. She frequently seeks validation about her feelings or the state of her relationships, asking a lot of questions that indicate her insecurity. We have mood-related problems. She tries to navigate through daily life, but often finds herself battling intense feelings of anxiety or depression that can feel overwhelming and impair her focus. Number 17, pulling back socially. So during periods of emotional distress, she may isolate herself from friends and family, missing out on social activities she used to enjoy. Another sign of BPD would be taking criticism very hard. Even constructive criticism can hit her hard, causing her to react with defensiveness or really take it to heart, which can lead to further anxiety. Next, let's look at struggles at work or school. If she has some BPD traits, her emotional ups and downs can hinder her ability to stay focused, meet deadlines, connect with colleagues. Let's just basically have a significant drop in her performance. And the last one we'll look at will be chaotic relationships. A pattern of intense but short-lived relationships often leads to drama and heartache, leaving her feeling even more isolated. Okay? So it's a long answer to that question. Okay. My husband has both ASD and ADHD, and people please his parents over. Okay. I saw that wing zero duality. Okay. The last question I'm going to over answer. I think this is from an NT wife who suspects their husband has ASD. And she's wanting to know some of the traits that would be indicative of that. Okay. If he struggles with social interactions, he often misses social cues like a smile or a nod that signals it's his turn to speak. That would be a trait. Another trait would be he tends to avoid making eye contact during conversations. He has an intense passion or a special interest, and he can hyper-focus on that for extended periods of time to the exclusion of everything else. He finds it challenging to express his emotions. He insists on sticking to a daily routine. He has some sensory sensitivities, of course. He takes things very literally. He's a literal thinker. He has a hard time interpreting body language, voice inflection, facial cues. He may have difficulty taking turns in conversation. He's not sure when he should speak and when he should listen. If he does speak, he may speak about his favorite topic and then drone on and on and on about that, and other people are kind of getting tired of listening. He's going to find small talk or idle chit-chat not only boring but painful. He's going to view your feedback and your suggestions as dumb because he has his agenda, he has his way of viewing the world, and he has mind blindness, which is a problem with perspective taking. So when you offer him some suggestions or feedback because you have a different perspective on the thing, He's going to reject it and view it as dumb, not because he's narcissistic, but because he cannot see your perspective. He can't crawl out of his skin, crawl into your skin, look out of your eyeballs, and see things like you see them. I think that's probably those are the big ones there. He's going to have some emotions blindness. He's going to have a hard time understanding why you feel a particular way. And if you explain it, he might think, why do you feel that way? And if you expect him to know what he's supposed to do based on how you feel, that's usually don't work. He's going to prefer solitary activities and solitary settings. He may have some executive function deficits, for example, time management, planning, organizing, shifting focus, so on. I think those are the big ones. So, yeah, if any of that resonates, then it's likely that he's somewhere on the spectrum. He may not have enough of the criteria to actually qualify for the diagnosis. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and we'll talk to you again soon.